already have it.
Yeah. And it's being live streamed, so that's fine with you, right? It's on Zoom as well. Chandra will introduce you. So I think he knows you from before. So that's what I thought.
Okay. So I wait here.
Yeah, so you can sit here. Then we'll start in 5 minutes. एक बार पॉइंटर दिखा दो एक बार देखना वो चल रहा है ना That's it. You just have to do that. Oh, this is also.
Let's get started. Aarti delegated mine to me because it was my idea to invite him, that we collectively decide. Turns out that I also taught Mayank and he survived and went on to do well in life. So Mayank passed out in 2010. Yes, and then he did lots of odd jobs, was in 3 or 4 different places, then went to Penn State to do marketing. Okay, and he does very interesting work. And so I ran into him and I am Bangalore and I gone to Bangalore and then I said, please come give a talk. And he said, marketing controls. Okay, economics, you also have to know market assets, but he does very interesting work using text analysis, etc. And this is not something that we do typically here, but this is the kind of stuff I think we need to learn more of. And I've requested Mayank to talk a little bit to us in terms of, you're going to do that, right? In terms of if you want to start doing this kind of stuff, how we should actually exactly be training ourselves. Okay, so he's going to talk a little bit about that. So he's IIM Bangalore faculty, etc., etc. You can look him up on the profile. But he's a well-wisher of IGIDR. That's all I'll say. Over to you, Mayank. Thanks.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Shall I put this on?
So this I need to make.
Put on the
Hi. Works? Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you for inviting me and giving me this opportunity
This is
to.
the most energetic any faculty member seen of mine. And he's lucky.
That's true. Especially when I was attending the classes, right? So, yeah. So, yeah, thanks a lot. And I'm very happy to be back here. Feels like coming back to home. And I've had some really good fond memories of this place. Some of them were like going out into the night, taking the last local train to Marine Drive just to have a cup of chai. Sounds ridiculous, but we still did that. And some of the bad memories were like getting up early to attend classes. That Chandra sir will agree with me. But yeah, overall, very excited to be back here in front of you presenting my work. So about what I will be presenting is a project which I have been working on for some time. It was a part of my PhD thesis, which is about how to use unstructured data, such as text specifically, to measure something. Okay. And specifically, I'll be talking about measuring digitalization of companies from the text used in the annual reports that they publish. Okay. Now, I mean, before we go into the details, one thing I would like to point out is why this is important, as to why using unstructured data and converting it into structured data for something like, say, for example, converting it into an index is important. Because one thing is just the sheer quantity of data, unstructured data that's available, right? So if you look at it, more than about 80% or more, even in fact, probably even more, 90% of the data that is available is unstructured data. It's in the form of text, it's a form of speech, it's in form of images, videos. Even right now, we are creating more data like we're recording this. So that's more unstructured data. And because there's so much of it, it's important that we try to understand it. We try to get information from it. And if you want to use our the standard statistical techniques that we learn in our statistics course, we need to convert it into a structured form, right? So that's the basic idea here, how to convert structured data, unstructured data into a structured form so that we can use it for a more statistical analysis. Okay, and so one thing is the quantity of data, which is our structured data as well. Another thing is the quality. I mean, the quality in the sense that if you're just looking at numbers, it doesn't give you a lot of information. But if you're looking at things like text or videos or images, that gives you a complete picture, right? For example, I was reading about research where these people used text, which was about how the doctors were communicating with their patients. The text from that to basically predict what is the likelihood of a person being readmitted for a heart disease. Okay, because in that you get a lot more information than if you're just taking the health data, the numbers. Right, so that's why it's important that, especially we as like even for the students there, it's important that we just do not focus on the standard techniques that we are learning, but also on how to use this kind of data learning, how to use machine learning or like AI techniques to convert the data that's there in this universe and we are able to use that for our purposes. Right? If you might be working in a company and you might want to understand how, say, what are the factors which affect consumer preferences, you can get that information from textual data with customer reviews, right? Okay, so there's so many different ways in which you would require, you would be able to use this kind of data. And because you want to understand, you want to use your standard statistical techniques, you would want to understand how you can extract this data and convert it into more structured format. Okay, and this is just one of the many ways and one of the different ways that we would like, that it can be done. And it's important that we keep on looking for newer methods and we're trying to understand how to do this. Okay, so specifically about this paper, what I'm doing is I'm using text in the annual report of firms to understand what is the level of digitalization in the firm. Okay. Now, how do I do that? I'll talk about. But so here I'm specifically talking about digitalization, but I'll talk more about in the end about how we can generalize this to other metrics or other constants. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll begin by defining digitalization, what it is, and we're going to talk about it as a strategy concept, and then we'll talk about what are the methods that are currently being used to study this kind of indexes or this kind of construct. Then we'll talk about what are the challenges with the existing method. Then we talk about what is the proposed approach, the new approach that we are proposing. And then we talk about how do we validate that approach, what are the implications and what are the next steps for this project. Because this is not yet a complete project, we are still a work in progress. So I'll be happy to get some feedback as well from you guys if you think there's something that more we can do with this. Okay. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is why we are studying digitalization. I think there's no, I would really, it's very easy to understand. It's all visible in front of us. Like I just talked about, there are so much data available in a digitalized form, and if there is specifically there is no alternative for a firm not to digitalize right now, right? So if you are running a business, it's not right now a choice that you digitalize or not. You must digitalize in order to survive the market. Okay, and here I put a few quotes from famous people so that just to drive home the point that digitalization is so important and everybody, every company, especially in this day and age, is wanting to become more digitalized. Okay, now what is digitalization though? Is it just investing into new technology, buying new technological products, spending more on say technical resources? Is it that, or is there something more to that? Okay, so if you look at some of the research and some of the examples that we see of where does digitalization help companies, you will realize that in order to gain a competitive advantage and to stay into the market, it is not just important that you invest in technology, but you align your business strategy with the concept of digitalization. So one example I can think of is of the company Sears, which was a big retailer in the US. They were considered like 10 years ago to be one of the pioneers in digitalization in terms of online business. But they bankrupted like a couple of years ago. And one of the reasons, if you ask the experts, would be that they were not able to integrate their digital technologies into their entire business process. So they would not be using they would not be able to say optimize their supply chain strategy based on technology, or be able to use their entire business. Basically not being able to integrate your entire business process or the entire business strategy with technology. And once you don't have that, you are going to lose out, because in that case, you're just investing in technology, you're just making more, you're investing more in technology, but you're not becoming an efficient business overall. Okay. And that's why it's important to understand that when I talk about digitalization, I'm not talking about say investing more resources in technology or buying more computers or that kind of thing, but making your company digital overall, right? Making your strategy aligning your strategy with the digital concept of digitalization. Okay. But in spite of that, what we see is that most companies are not doing that, right? So if you believe this survey that was done a few years ago, it was found that 90% of the companies believed that they have to do some kind of digitalization, but only 15% were actually, only 15% were actually executing a digitalization strategy. Okay. Now, what does that tell us? That there is a need for us to be able to, and that for firms specifically, to be able to understand where they lie in terms of their digital maturity level, right? And for that, they would need to have a construct, a way to measure where they are. Okay. And that's what we are going to do. We are going to see how they can do that, whether there's a simple way to measure digitalization or not, and what are the different ways to do it. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's come to that. So like I said, digitalization, we should define it as a concept of strategy, as a strategic orientation, and not just not just a combination of different metrics of investment. Okay, so if you're defining it, digitalization is that. The way we define it is the integration of digital technologies and digital business models into its long-term vision and strategy, which affects all aspects of business. So everything that's in the business should be should be digitalized. What does that include? It includes building digital capabilities, including analytics or technology in your strategic decision making, integrating all your cross-functional teams. So all teams should be integrated. There should be some kind of like the data. For example, if one team is collecting data, it should be available to another team. So if the marketing team is collecting data, it should be available to the finance team so that they can use that data. Okay. Then we talk about digital culture and literacy. So there should be a culture where innovation is encouraged. People are encouraged to taking courses about different digital platforms and so on. Okay, and there should be an overall governance at a governance level. That's at the top level. There should be a digital transformation culture. So the management, the CEOs need to be. They would want their company to be more digitalized. Okay, so these are the 5 aspects we looked at when we talk about digitalization as a concept of strategy. Okay, now if you're trying to measure such a concept, which is at a strategic level, right? So which is not that easily observable, right? So we cannot really say just by looking at a company what its strategy is. So if you want to measure that, what are the different challenges? One is, like I said, it's a latent construct. So it's not really seen. So there are a lot of unobservables, right? We don't know what's happening in the mind of the manager, right? So that's what we need to do. We need to map the manager's mind, and we need to understand what its strategic vision is. Okay. So that's the basic challenge. Now, how can you do that? Because it's not going to be easily visible in terms of the firm's financial metrics or in terms of the numbers, right? So how would you do that? The way it's being done typically is using primary data, where you would conduct a survey. Okay, so you would go to, say, different companies, you would go to their managers, you would give them this kind of survey. So if you can have put an example of a survey here, where for different aspects of digitalization, you will ask them questions. So for example, here, they ask them, digitalization is a central component of our corporate strategy, whether you strongly agree to that or you strongly disagree to that. Another aspect would be the degree to which our activities in our connection with the digital transformation have achieved their objectives. So how well the transformation has worked till now, right? So that's another aspect. Okay, so all these different aspects. So this is just one. You can have all multiple questions, multiple aspects of digitalizations included in the survey, and ask these managers how to where these companies rate in these aspects. Okay, so that's the traditional way of doing that. Going to the managers, asking them questions, rating them, and then based on that, trying to come up with a score of this. Right? But that's probably not the best way. Right? Why? One, it's not easy to get access to these managers. You cannot just go to them and conduct a survey. You will have to make appointments. They're basically not that easily accessible. Second, if you are measuring your construct using this way, you cannot go back in time and measure. Right? If you want, say, for example, now you want to understand what's the level of digitalization for a company in 2015, you will not be able to do that. Second, it's difficult to perform trend analysis or a causal analysis because for that you need data over time, and if you want that kind of data, you would have to conduct the survey multiple times with the same people. Again, which is not that easy because it's not easy to get access to these people. If you want to do it multiple times, it's going to be a lot of resources that you. Okay. In addition to that, like I said, because there is a lot of information available, other than what we can get from surveys, why not use this? Right? So because, for example, these managers, they are writing articles, they are writing, they're in press releases, they are giving interviews, they are publishing stuff in, say, trade magazines, they're doing analyst calls. So there are so many ways in which these managers are telling you about their company, even though they're not directly talking about digitalization, but they're still talking about it in some way, in that particular way. So what people did was, instead of using this, a better way to do it is to use that information, which is already available in the public market. Okay, so that you don't have to conduct these surveys every time. You can go back in time and measure it from there. You can get that information from there. Okay. So that is called the computer-aided text analysis. Okay. Why it's computer-aided? Because typically you would use some kind of a computer software. It doesn't have to be computer-aided, but mostly it's computer-aided text analysis, where you are analyzing the text of firms which you will get from their written or spoken communication. This text could be from their annual reports, from their press releases, interviews, letters that they write to shareholders. A lot of different ways you can get such kind of text. Okay. And based on that, we want to identify the pattern of the kind of text they are using related to whatever you are measuring. So if we see that a manager is talking about digitalization a lot in 1 year and 5 years ago he was not, then it probably means that the company has digitalized over the last 5 years actually. Okay, or in terms of their digital maturity, it is increased. Okay. Now, how this typically is done is, the first step to do this is you need to create a construct dictionary. Okay, now what is a construct dictionary? It is basically a list of terms or phrases or words which are related to whatever you are measuring. So in this case, if you are measuring digitalization, you will have a long list of words. Say, for example, here you have advanced communication, analytics, artificial intelligence, autonomous, big data, Bluetooth, so many different words, right? All related to the concept of digitalization. Now, how would you construct this dictionary? There are multiple ways. One is you start with whatever you are trying to analyze. You start with the annual reports. Some person would go on reading it. He would analyze what are the most words which are most used, and then from that you will have multiple iteration of where domain experts would be rating each word, and then at the end of it, after multiple iterations and ratings, they would come up with a list of words where all the raters agree that these words are related to digitalization. Okay. Now, once we have this kind of a list, the next step is to calculate the score. And that is typically done. Now, there are more than one approach, but this is the approach which is most common. Is you look at the proportion of text. You can look at the text that's been published. Say, if I want to look at annual report, if that's the text I'm using, I would look at what proportion of that annual report contains one of these terms. Right, so if out of 100 words in the annual report, 40 words are amongst these, then my score is 40 over 100, that's 40%. Okay, so this is called the bag of words approach, and that's typically the one that's used. Okay, and it doesn't have to be annual report, it can be any text that you are using. Okay. So that's the basic way that you would a typical computer-aided text analysis method would do this. Now, again, like I said, there is like one problem you can see with this is in the first step, right? Because that step you are requiring domain experts their time, and that step can be a really time-consuming and resource-intensive, and also biased depending on who your expert is. Okay. So that's the problem with this method. Okay. So what that means is that because it takes so much time, it's not easily replicated. Right? If I want to create another dictionary, right, which is similar to this, I would have to get the experts again, create, do these iterations again, and then I'll have to do that. So it requires a lot of resources. So it's not easy to replicate this multiple times. Okay. Second problem with this method is that the bag of words approach which I talked about, it assumes that every word in the dictionary is equally important to digitalization, right? So it means that if a word like system or collaboration is present in the document, it is the same important, it has the same importance as the word digitalization or digital transformation being present. Okay, but that's not true, right? If we see digital transformation is present, it probably means it's talking about digital transformation. But if collaboration is present, we are not 100% sure it's talking about digital transformation, right? So that's another shortcoming you can say about this method. So in order to get over these methods, in order to for this, what we do is we propose a new method, okay, where we are first we are identifying the dictionary terms, and then we are assigning the weights based on how these different words are used in different contexts. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Say I have one text which is occurring in the context of digitalization. Say, for example, that's the one is green. Okay, so these are the different words which are used in a document which has the topic, say, digital transformation. Okay, then I randomly pick another document, okay, which is where the focus of which document or that article is not digitalization, but some other random concept. Right? Say it talks about healthcare, it could be anything. Okay, now what you'll see is the words which are more prevalent in the digital text are texts like digital transformation, data, things, technology. Whereas in the other text, there are things like firm, obesity management, dynamic firm. So these are okay, so these words are less likely to be related to digitalization, right? So that's the idea of the method that we are proposing. That we identify the terms of the dictionary as well as give them weights based on the prevalence of these terms in different contexts. One is the context of digitalization, and the other is in any other random context. Okay. Now, is that clear? Right. So, how do we do that? So, once we do this, the next step is how do we do this?
Do the hard work to get those green color thing, right?
No. Here, what we are doing is right now it's just looking at how many times these words have been used. So for that, all we need is one software which counts the number of words.
No, but which words you're going to look for?
Here we are taking all the words, right? I'll come to how we finally create that dictionary. Okay, so we do that by using something which is called the yes. No, I'm not talking about any problem. I'm just talking about any random article you take from a magazine which talks about digitalization. I'll come to creating the dictionary. Yeah, that's your. I'll come to that. Here I'm just showing you that there is difference in two types of text. Okay, and the idea of our approach is that we are finding in which, for each word, we are trying to find in which type of text is more likely to occur. That's the basic idea of the approach, and how exactly that turns into creating that dictionary and creating the score. Okay. Now for that we use something which is called the supervised latent Dirichlet allocation model. Okay, it's called the SLDA model. It is basically a more extrapolation of the latent Dirichlet allocation model. So I'll first describe that, and then we'll describe how the supervised LDA model works. So in the LDA model, that's the latent Dirichlet allocation model, what it does is it takes documents, it takes multiple documents, it takes a corpus of documents. So where you have multiple documents, we have a different corpus. And what the LDA model assumes is that each document is composed of multiple topics. Okay, and these topics are distributed based on the Dirichlet distribution. And from that, you will see that each document will have different proportions of each topic. So here, for example, I've just taken 4 topics, and these theta 1, theta 2, 3, 4, 1. That's the proportion of that topic in a particular document. So that's document 1. The proportion of these topics in document 1, then proportion of these topics in document 2. Okay, so that's the first thing. It assumes that each document is a combination of different topics. And it assumes that each topic is composed of different words. Okay, each word having a different association with the topic. So, for example, for word 1, the association between topic 1 and word 1 is W11. The association between word 1 and topic 2 is W12. So, for each word, we have a different association parameter for each topic, right? So we can estimate that using the LDA model. Okay, so if you have, all you need to do is you put in a corpus of documents, set of documents in that model, and it's going to output the estimates of these parameters. So it will have for each document, it will give you what topic is in what proportion, and in each topic, it will tell you what is the association of each word with each topic. Okay, so that's the LDA model. Now, if, for example, we know what are the topics of these documents, right? So suppose we know that document 1 is in the context of digitalization. So suppose it talks about digital transformation, and document 2, it is talking about anything else, other context. Right? But it's in a similar, it is written by a similar author. For example, we can take it from the same magazine. Okay. The only difference in that case is in which context it is written. So suppose if it is written in context of digitalization, I take it as a label equals to 1. I use that variable, label equals to 1. And in if it is used in another context, I take label is equal to 0. Right? So I have a dummy variable here. 1 if the label is digitalization, 0 if it is some other context. Now on top of that, I can run a logistic regression model, right? Where my dependent variable would be that label, the dummy variable 1 and 0, and my independent variable is the proportion, the topic proportion in each topic. Okay. So that is the this entire setup is what is the supervised latent terrestrial allocation model. Latent terrestrial allocation model where I have the logistic regression, I'm running this logistic regression and the LDA model as the entire system. I'm estimating these parameters jointly. Okay. And from this, if I'm running this, if I'm doing all this, what will I get? I'll get estimates of these parameters. The first thing I'll get the topic proportions, that is the proportion of each topic in each document. Second, I'll get the word associations, that is the association of each word with each topic. The third thing I'll get the logistic coefficients, which I will get from the logistic model regression. That would represent the association between each topic and the dependent variable, that's digitalization, because my independent variables are the topic proportions. Right, so that's I'm going to get the association between the topic and the digitalization data. And if I have these estimates, I can also get the predicted value of the response variable, that's the label. Okay, what will that give me? It will give me the predicted probability of any document belonging to this set of belonging to the context of digitalization, right? And I can do that not only for the documents for which I set up this model, but for any other documents, right? Because I can use these estimates and try to predict it for an outer sample, say for outer sample data, right? So in that case, I can use that outer sample data as, say, for example, the company's annual report. Okay, and if I do that, I can get the predicted value of the annual report belonging to the context of digitalization. Okay, and that is not exactly, no, and that is what our score is going to be.
Topic 1, 2, 3, 4, right?
That the LDA model does.
Topic of
Yeah, it's an unsupervised. It doesn't tell me the name of the topic. All it does is what is the combination groups. Yeah. Okay. In addition to that, one thing I can calculate from this is I can calculate the weight for each word. Right? How I have the association between word and the topic, and I have association of the between the topic and the dependent weight, the digitalization. If I take a product of that and sum up it over all topics, I can get the weight for each word. Okay, which is basically association between that particular word and the digitalization. Okay, so I can get these 4, and if I have this, I can get the score as well. Right, so now once we understand what this process is, let's look at the exact method of step by step, how we can achieve that and how we can get the final score. Okay, so the proposed method, we have these 7 steps. I'll go through each step one by one. I'll skip the first step because we already talked about what the definition of digitalization is. So go to the second one where I'm identifying the domain of digitalization. Okay, now this step is where I am selecting the documents for which I'll use to build my SLDA model. Okay, it's going to basically here I am identifying what are the words in the context of digitalization and what words are in the context, not in the context of digitalization. So I'm basically going to select two types of documents. One set of documents are going to be focused on digitalization. Their topic is going to be related to digitalization. The other one is not going to be. Okay. Now, how do I decide which what the topics are going to be? That's again initially I have to define digitalization, create a set of create some concept which I think would be related to digitalization, and then I'm going to select these documents. Okay, so let's start. So the first thing I do is I select a certain number of digital articles. So these are articles which would be focused, their topic would be focused on the concept of digitalization. Okay, I have to do some exploratory analysis for that. So I did that. I used these sources. These are the major, some reputed sources. I took and I selected 125 articles published in between 2014 and 19, which talked about this concept. Okay, so these words, these documents represents the context of digitalization. Okay, are they correct? And then from the same publications, from the same time period, I randomly select 125 articles, which are not, and I make sure that these 125 articles are not talking about this. So that I manually make sure that these documents are talking about something else and not digitalization. But otherwise, I selected them randomly. Okay. So now what I have is I have a set of documents which gives me a context of digitalization. The other set of documents which gives me a random, the same word, the words used in a different context. Random. Okay. Now, so I have identified the domain. Now I need to create the digital dictionary. Now, how do I do that? I do that from the set of digital documents. So the 125 articles that are selected, those are the articles which are digital in nature, right? Now, if I want to identify the digital dictionary, so that's the dictionary of words which I'll take to calculate my score. I need to make sure those are the words which talk about digital. Now, if I take all the words in this set, it would include a lot of words which are not talking about digitalization. That would be a lot of noise, right? It will be other topics they will be talking about. There would be also just non-functional, just functional words, not a non-informational words. Right. So for that, I remove three types of text from that. The first is I remove all non-informational words. Okay, what are non-informational words? These are specifically certain parts of speech which is not giving me more information. These are just functional words. These are just because in the English language you need to use these to create sentences. For example, it will be conjunctions, interjections, pronouns, proper nouns, punctuations. So all these I remove. Now, how do I remove that? There is, like, if you go to Python, they have I'm not sure of the exact package, but I think it's called the UDP package, Universal Dependency Model, which basically assigns parts of speech to each word depending on how it is used, where it is used in the sentence, whether it has it's capitalized or not. So it uses a lot of different rules to identify the exact part of speech. Okay, and it tags each word there. Now it's not perfect. You'll find that even after doing that, it's going to misassign or mistacks of the words. But overall, it does pretty decently well. Okay. So after doing that, I can remove all the non-informational words. Then I remove all the stop words. Now, what are stop words? Stop words are words which are so commonly used that they don't give me any information. So words like the, and, with, right, off. So those kind of words are stop words, right? So, and you'll find there will be so many lists of stop words you will find right? So Python has its own list, R has its own list, a lot of packages have a list of stop words, right? So these are words which even the search engine is programmed to ignore when you try to make it very clear. Okay. So I remove all the words which give me no information. I remove all the words which are so common that they don't give me any information. Okay, another type of words or texts that I should remove are words which are only occurring in a small number of articles, right? Why? Because I want to, for the dictionary, I want to identify those terms which talk about the topic of digitalization, and that topic is being used in all the 125 articles, right? So I want to have words which occur in more number of articles. If they occur in more number of articles, they are more likely to talk about the topic of the entire corpus of the entire set that we have, which is digitalization. Right. So any word, say for example, data we found occurs in 116 articles. Technology occurs in 115, where a word like studio occurs in only 2 or flyers occurs in only 3. Right, so these words are only specific to a particular article, so they are not probably they don't really matter much when we're measuring, say, the overarching concept of this set. I'm not using that yet. Here I'm just cleaning the data basically. This is the first part where I'm taking the data and trying to do it actually. The first part is cleaning the data and removing all the noise that's there. So these, when I say I'm removing them, they are basically being used as a zero. Because there is going, if I take them, it's still going to be a lot of noise in the model. Because the actual set of digitalization terms are going to be very few, and when I'm fitting the model, the fit is not going to be that great because a large part of that fit is going to come from these words which are not really important to me. Okay, so that's why the idea is to create that dictionary and only use that dictionary to fit that model. Okay. Okay, now here, so I remove non-informational words, I remove stop words. The next thing is to remove words which are only which are specific to certain articles. So basically, I would need to remove words which are occurring in less than, say, K digital articles. Now, what is K? K is a threshold that I would use. That could be 10, that could be 15, that could be 25. Now, what is that K? That I need to calculate. Now, how do I calculate that? So the idea here is that I want to select only those terms which give me the best discrimination between digital and non-digital text. Right? So that is why I can use the SLDA model to figure out what's the right K. Okay. So how do I do that? I take my 125 articles of 125 articles, digital, non-digital. So I have 250 articles. Out of that, I randomly select 100 digital and 100 non-digital articles. That's going to be my base set. Okay. And then I take only the terms, that's word paragraphs, which occur in less than K documents. Which occur in more than K documents. So I remove anything which occurs, say, in less than K. Now K I take from 1 to 100. I take different Ks. I run this model multiple times, and then I try to predict for the other 50 non-digital and digital articles the label. The label is whether they are from the digital set or they are from the non-digital. Okay, so I'm basically using the SLDA model to predict value of Y for the out of sample data, the holdout data. And I do this for different values of K, and using that, I'm finding the K which gives me the best prediction. Okay, because the idea is to find only keep those words which give me the best prediction of the digitalization concept. Okay, so once I do that, I see that the prediction is best when I have K equals to 31. Okay, so I remove any word or any term which occurs in less than 31 articles, right? Because those terms are probably only talking about the specific point that the particular article is making, rather than talking about the entire overarching concept. Yes.
So we have Apple and we have Google.
Mhm.
Both do digitalization.
Mhm.
Apple's focus on digitalization is very different from Google's focus on digitalization. So it's possible that the terms that Apple uses occur less than 31 times.
Mhm.
And it's possible that some important information gets thrown out because there's something very unique about some company and uses those terms. Is that something you to worry about?
I think yes, there is a chance that we're going to miss out something because again, because yeah, but the idea
is such that we are all really thinking in the whole in this space.
no, that's the thing, we don't because we are trying to use this to predict it for any type of company, right, for any industry, and that is why it's important that the initial set of articles that we take is very very carefully, that we include all types of different aspects of digitalization. So if we are able to do that, then we should, even in that case, we're going to miss out something. But hopefully, we are going to take the major concepts, which are where we talked about the overall digitalization. Because, like I said, here we are trying to measure digitalization as an overarching concept across enterprise, over the entire enterprise, rather than only focusing on a specific part of it. Right. So again, there is a chance that we might miss out on something because of that, but hopefully we are not. Here we are trying to pick a case such that the prediction is the best. So yeah, that's the idea. So based on that, we pick 212 terms, which we are including in the final dictionary. I'll come to what those terms are. Okay. Now, once we pick those terms, we need to assign weights. How do we do that? We already talked about that. We run the SLDA model on the entire set now, not just 100 and 100. We take the entire set, 250 articles, 125 digital, 125 non-digital, and we get this as an estimate of the SDF of estimates of the logistic relation. What you will see is it gives us 10 topics. In the first topic is the coefficient is the highest. That's the one which is most related to digitalization. You'll see it uses words like transform, technology, process, and so on. Whereas the topic 10 is the least likely to be related to digitalization, and it uses words like board, issue, article, set, process. Right. So overall, it does seem to make sense. The model does seem to make sense. We are picking words which are more related to digitalization. So based on this, we can assign our weights. We already talked about it. And here is a picture of, say, all the different words and what. So you'll see the words which are bigger are given more weight. So you'll see technology is the one which is the one pretty high, transformation is high, technology data is very high, it's focused on technologies. Yeah, right. So basically, this is the dictionary of terms that we have created, 212. Right. Now, we use this to calculate the firm and the year specific digitalization score. So for each firm, we can do it for multiple years. And how do we do that? We are using the SLDA model estimation to predict the probability of a company's annual report belonging to the set of digitalized articles. Right. So what is the probability of that company report occurring in a context of digitalization? That's what we are trying to estimate using the SLDA model. So for our data, we took 204 firms over 5 years across 5 industries. Now, how do we select this sample? We do that based on this Gartner Consulting's digital IQ score. So they are calculating the digital IQ score for these companies. So they do that for every year. We selected the ones they did for 2022, and for that that's the sample that I take. right? The scores for which the companies for which they calculated the score, because I wanted to validate it. We wanted to validate how our score is doing against their score, and that's why we took that sample. Okay, and what you will see here is that if you see this graph, you'll see that for all these 5 different industries, there seems to be an upward trend, which for digitalization we should expect to happen, because we are expecting specifically in this time period that there should be an increase in digitalization. So overall, the first test of face validity, it seems to pass our score. It seems to be that we are measuring something which is going up, right? Right. So based on that, here right now in the model, we are now calculating our score for each firm for each year. So that's how we calculate the score. Now the next step is to assess how our score is doing, whether the method we are using is working or not. So for that, we assess, first thing we assess the reliability of that method. That is how reliable our method is, whether if we do it multiple times, whether it's going to still give us the same results. Okay, so we do it in 3 ways. The first thing is the retest reliability, right? So here we are trying to see that if we that the language that we are using in the annual reports, whether that is consistent over time, right? So for that to basically test that, we are calculating our score for multiple time periods, and we are trying to see what's the correlation. We get a correlation of 0.43, which is not that high, but if you look at the other measures of the kata-based approaches, it comes at pretty much in the middle. So most of the scores range from I think 0.3 to 0.7. That's where the test reliability is for them. Right, so we are doing pretty decently there. In terms of the inter-rater reliability, in terms of inter-rater reliability, what it means is that if different raters are rating your companies, then you should get the same score. Now, in our case, we don't have different raters. What we have is we are basically using text, and we're using that text from different documents. Right, so to test that, the way we test that is we are testing whether if we had taken a different initial set of documents that we had taken, if that had been different, then our score have changed. And so for that, we take 2 randomly selected samples of that initial set. We take 100 documents once. We take another 100 sample of 100 documents again, and we find the correlation of that. Comes out to be 0.64. Again, significantly positive. Makes sense. Then again, parallel forms reliability. Again, we are measuring it against a dictionary which is created by manually. So this we take from literature. Okay. Now, more than reliability, what we are trying to see is whether what we are measuring is actually digitalization or not. So for that, we look at we try to assess validity. That we do in multiple ways. We are comparing our score against the existing index, that's the Gartner's index. We are also comparing our score against existing methods. That's the survey method and other methods. And then we are trying to relate our score to other indicators of digitalization. One is firm productivity, the other is investment in technology. Okay, so the first one we are doing is we are looking at how our score compares against Gartner's score. Now, Gartner's score is a score which has been used by companies as a benchmark of their digital maturity. It considers these factors to measure the factors that I mentioned here to measure their digitalization. And what we see is if we look at these 5 different industries and we calculate the correlation between these 2 scores, we see a consistent positive score, meaning that there is some part of that particular score, the variation in that score, which we are consistently capturing, right? And so which means that there's some part of digitalization we are capturing in our score. Okay. Then we want to compare our score against the traditional method, that's the survey method. So for that, we conducted a survey. We created a survey and we went to these senior employees of the selected 204 firms. We can only get data for about 79. Okay, and the overall correlation between their rating and our rating was 0.19. Again, significantly positive, not that high. One reason could be that we not only asked them to rate their company, but we also asked them to rate their competitors. Right? So probably it might be the case that we are able to capture some information which they don't have about their competitors because we are using annual reports. So it may be because of that, but the score that the correlation we get is 0.19. Again, still positive and significant, but not that high. Okay, then we also compare our score again by using different kata methods, which are we use the computer-aided text analysis method. One is by using the expert dictionary. So here we are creating our dictionary using the SLDA model. If we use the expert dictionary, which is already there, okay, we see how well does that score compare against the existing index. That's the digital IQ Gartner's index. So we see that overall the correlations that we get are, except for insurance, mostly we are having a better correlation with them compared to the score created using an expert dictionary. Again, it seems that we are still capturing, we are able to better capture that index compared to this. And also that because, and also the fact that we have a score which is much easier to calculate than that, there seems to be some value in using our score. Also, we use another kata method, which is called the doc2vector method. I'm not going to go into the detail of that method, but basically it is a method where we estimate where we convert each document into a vector. Okay, I'm not going to go into the detail of how that is, and then we, based on that, we calculate the distance in the score. And if we look at that, we are going much better compared to that model. Okay, so overall, it seems that our score is doing pretty okay, measuring digitalization. And finally, another thing that we want to do is we want to see if our score is able to predict other factors which we think are related to digitalization. For example, one is total factor of productivity. Okay, so we estimated the total factor of productivity for these 204 companies, and we ran a panel regression model with the dependent variable as productivity and the independent variable as digital, the score that we calculated. And there's a positive and significant effect of that. Similarly, we do this for investment in technology, okay, where our dependent variable is our score and the independent variable is investment in these different apps. Okay, so the data that we take here is whether a company invested in a particular app, which is by here I mean that they are in technology, a business function technology here. Okay, and again we see a positive and significant growth. So it seems to be that the score has we are able to validate the score based on whether it is related to these concepts or not. Okay. So again, here what I am showing is a few trends. The red line here looks at productivity. The blue line is digitalization. What you'll see is more or less these lines are moving together. Okay, and these bars here show you the time at which investment was made in these enterprise management apps. And what you'll see is that every time there's an investment made, there seems to be an increase in digitalization over here too. And so we see over there. Okay. So again, so these are just random like companies or examples I'm taking to show you that there seems to be a relationship between these two factors and the digitalization that we calculate. Okay. Now, why is this important? Right? Why do we? What do we do? Why that is important? We already talked about that. I think most of it that we are able to find a way to convert unstructured data into structured data. We are able to take text, and we are able to convert that into numbers, and we can use those numbers to do more analysis. We can look at how digitalization affects, say, productivity, how it affects firm performance, and those kind of things we can do. In the sense, the basic implication for our method is that it works, that it is able to develop a method which is attenuates the problem that we see in survey methods. We can measure our constructs retrospectively, right? We can go back in time. It is better than better than the current approaches that we have, because we are able to assign weights to the firm, to the words, which the traditional approach doesn't do. So in that way, it is better than those methods. We are able to still be able to convert our text into data. Okay. In terms of how it helps the companies, it helps the companies because now if they use this, they'll be able to see where they lie. They can, in terms of their digitalization, they can benchmark themselves against other companies, and they can do that pretty easily because it's a replicable method. We are able to automate it. There's not that much manual input required here, except at the first part. Okay, so that's the contribution that we have in terms of how it can help the firms. Yes.
Pick up digitalization after it's only then companies will talk.
They can also talk about what they're going to do in the future. Yes, I mean that shows.
Every investment, it looks like they talk about digitalization
Mhm.
rather than saying that I am going to digitalize.
They can be talking about digitalization in the report, right? Because in the report they're going to talk about what they do next year.
One increase is the year before that.
Over here.
And purple one, just before that year, there seems to be a slight increase. Looks like increase.
Yes, so I mean, even here, you'll see there's a slight increase. So, yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, what exactly we capture, it depends on what they're writing about. And that's one of the shortcomings of the method, that it's going to vary depending upon what exactly the manager wants to convey in that report. Right? And that's one thing. That's when I talked about the next step. That's one of the things that we want to add to this is we want to measure this not just using annual reports, but also other text as well, so that we can see if there's a discrepancy, right? Maybe they're not talking about that in their annual report. Maybe they're talking about that in the calls that they have with the analyst or some other interviews. Then probably we'll be able to capture more, say, comprehensive method. But yeah, of course, because we are using just one text, there could be some things which we are not capturing. Yes.
Every year, the context of digitalization is changing, especially in now the technology is moving very fast.
It could be possible.
So it might be year specific. That in 1 year, firms are talking about digitalization at once, using some certain terms. In another year,
I mean, it could be possible, but overall, I think we assume that over that specifically just for 5 years, it shouldn't have changed. The language of digitalization should not have changed that much. But I am sure, like if we compare between 2010 and 2022, it's definitely going to change. But probably between 2014, 2018, it shouldn't change that much. Right? But if we take a longer period, I think a better idea is to do this year-wise. Take, say, a set 3 years, create a specific dictionary for those particular years, then for the next set of 5 years, create a new dictionary. I think, yeah, that's something which can be done. Yes.
Any Indian companies in this?
Sorry?
Any Indian company?
No, all of these is from the US companies. This is from the SEC reports that they publish.
But the Indian companies will talk a lot of digitalization, but no investment has been coming.
Yeah, so again,
I'm just trying to see that if I look at the text,
mhm.
and there's a lot of digital talk going on, but I don't see it falling, being followed up with the
The measure here is we are trying to measure digitalization as a strategy. So that's at least that's the intention. So if we are talking about two companies, one which is both of them say are not investing, one is talking about it, the other is not talking about it, then probably the one which is talking about it is more interested in digitalization. But okay, if they are lying about it, then we don't know. But at least the ones that at least for the annual reports, they still have to maintain a certain standard. Right? They still have a certain set of things that they need to mention because that's the regulation. So that's why we did pick the annual reports because they are more standardized in that. But of course, there's a chance that they are doing some kind of impression management. Yes. And that's why I think it's important to not just take the annual report, but take other things as well.
Subsequent to that, if you do a kind of a follow-up with the investment to in IT or so companies which said they were going to digital, they also signed the sample set. Was there a kind of a positive input in the investment in the IT sector, in the IT?
Yeah, we did see, right? We did see a comparison between those two. Like here we did, like every time where you see there's that bar, that's where they invested in a particular technology. So that's just for two companies, but overall also we see that there is a significant relationship. Anything? Yes. I mean, it could be, but yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of what other way could be, but here the idea is to find those terms which predict the context best. Okay, and that's based on that. If we're using this model, we are going to use K. You can use another model. If you use the different model, you will get a different K, or you will get the same K. Again, that's dependent on the type of model you're using. Thanks. Yes. Yes, it differentiates between the language that is being used by authors which talk about digitalization versus the language that's being used by authors which talk about something else. I'm thinking one way could be to use a different model, let's say. I mean, here like we use the other doc2 vector model. That is another model where you are basically class. So any model which can be used to classify documents, right, or to classify language into different labels can be used for that, right? Or if there is a way where you can compare as to how for the specificity. That's so when I say the number of documents which it is used in the word, that basically tells you whether a word is more specific to a particular document or it talks about the entire concept. I think if it is used in 100 documents, it's probably not talking about the entire concept, which is digitalization. So if there is a way, one way could be to say plot the specificity with the number of times that the word occurs in, and then find the what do you say? I think it's called the inflection point of that graph, and see where that occurs. That's one way to do that. But again, it might give you a different answer. It might give you a different result. And again, how would you know which one is the best? Probably by again doing the entire analysis and see which one is giving you the best prediction. Yes.
You talked about reliability of modeling, you talked about correlation learning from different models. That was with different types of articles that you
Yeah, so we did that. We did different samples of articles and we compared the correlation between the scores.
significant, then doesn't that kind of address the problem of because across
I mean, what it does say is that if we take different sets of articles, it should give us similar results. But if we take different Ks, whether it gives us different results, I am not too sure about that. It probably would, but I don't think it should make that much of a difference because using the K that we have used, that should give us the best result. Because that we are picking up K based on the fact that that is giving us the best prediction.
If you have like different samples and for each sample the best case, the results are consistent. Then in a way the results would
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. Yes, that should take care of that somehow, not completely, but yes, somehow. Yes.
Branch area models. We need to limit the things that in the trust.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
So to run the area model, do we need to limit the word or saving the word?
Yes. You don't have to do that, but it's a good idea to do that. We're talking about is spelling the word. Spelling the word is basically if I have a word like digitalization and I have a word like digital, they basically won't mean the same thing. So we should basically it's converting each word into the root of that word. So there is a simple algorithm that's there for that. We actually use that. That's why you see here. That's what why you see here is you'll see that the word is like article, right? There's no e there, so that's we getting to the root of that. So yeah, we have done these things. Can you be a bit louder? The accuracy score. So we don't use an accuracy score. What we have is we are comparing this thing, right? We're comparing it against an existing score, and we are seeing how well it is correlated with that score. That's one way to test the accuracy of the model, right? I mean, you could try that different models, and if you get a better correlation, that's probably going to give you a more accurate model. Because this is one way is telling us whether what we are measuring is actually digitalization or not. Could be. I mean, we haven't done that, but I think that's one way if we calculate it at an industry level. In that way, we are just what you are saying is that we measure it separately for each industry. Yeah. Yeah. So like what he said that if say for Apple, digitalization might be something different. For another company, digitalization might be something different. So yeah, the terms that they are using might be different, and that might give us a better accuracy. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. But yeah, but right now we are trying to keep it simple and as simple as possible.
Taking you to do this.
How long has it taken me? 5 years. More than that. Not audible. That's a 233. So, I think nobody else said anything, so I'm hoping they heard things. Okay. So, yeah. Anybody else have any else say anything else?
Any advice on what a student should be doing? To teach them since all this.
So all this, I'll tell you how I learned. I learned just by doing things. I took up this project and I didn't really take any courses on this. And it's just like whatever I would want to do, I would search on Google how to do it. Try writing the code in Python an hour, and just going that. So I think that's the best way to learn. You pick up a project and then try to work on that. I think that's the best way to learn, to just pick up a project rather than, because of the classes you might learn something and you might not really implement that as it is. So I think the best way to learn is just take a project, take a data and work on that. So I think term papers might be a good idea if you're using that in this. And yeah, I think that then in terms of other than the classes here, what you can do is probably learn it online. I think there's a lot of online resources available. And if you guys want to work on a project, I mean, want to work on this, help me with out with this thing. And if you want to work on that, just reach out to me like first. Specifically, if you're trying to learn something and what have a problem, I can definitely send an email.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank
Your
you.
presentation, loved it. I think all of us.
Thank you.
And it's ending.
Thank you.